Thanks for y'all for, I guess, coming out and checking out this tutorial. The funny thing is, I literally just started using Ableton this year. I was a Logic fan for the longest, and I just had a copy of Ableton. I worked at Guitar Center, and so I had it for a while. And Ableton has kind of gotten a lot of buzz in the past few years. So I was like, let me give this a try. My first day, I pulled open the sampler, and I just fell in love with the sampling and the built-in time stretching. You can do this kind of stuff in Logic, but it's so much more intuitive and fun in Ableton, and easier for me to do this in Ableton. It seems like the possibilities are a lot more endless, and it opens up a lot more possibilities for being creative. So I switched over to Ableton. Still use Logic sometimes here and there for other things. Up until 11, I used it for vocal comping, but now we have vocal comping in 11. So I think Ableton is going to be my DAW. But yeah, so sampling is just something I do as a producer, and Ableton is great for sampling. So I wanted to do this tutorial on basically creating your own samples out of anything and using simpler plugins. So it's very simple tutorial for people who might not be familiar with Simpler. I have friends who've been using Ableton for a long time, and they've seen what I was doing in Simpler, and they're like, wow, I didn't know it could do that. So if anybody hasn't gotten accustomed to using Simpler or what it can do, this is kind of a tutorial for that, and just show a little bit of my process. So this is a track that I made completely using a sample of me hitting a water bottle with a set of keys. And here's the original sample here. And so that's the sample of me, like I said, hitting a water bottle with a set of keys using my, I have a Black Hole 2 Jay-Z. It's a Jay-Z microphone, some weird Polish company that makes microphones, but it's a pretty standard condenser microphone. You can do this with any microphone just to get a nice, recording. And this is the track that I ended up making. So all the synth sounds and the bass, every sound in this except for obviously my vocals, I use the Simpler plugin to create out of that sample. So here's how everything sounds. Baby, let's go and make sci-fi. Don't you know we living in sci-fi? Sci-fi. Sci-fi. I know you're thinking you don't like sci-fi. I'm telling you that everything's sci-fi. So I'm into lo-fi music, and so it was like a lo-fi sounding, track with a bit of like R&B inspiration. And obviously there's so much more you can do. Like I'm barely just tapping the surface with it. But again, as I said, this would be a simple tutorial. So I guess the first thing I did was I made a kick drum. And so I'll pull up my kick drum track here, and this is the kick drum that I ended up making from the sample, and take all the effects off here. And I did that basically by using Simpler to transpose the sound down a bit, because obviously it's a sample of keys hit in a water bottle, a lot of high-end content. And so you can really simply just use the frequency wheel here to kind of use your ears to just what sounds good. You can get a lot more technical with a lot of high-end EQs. Like I'll see a lot of guys use like Fab Filter, which I have, and to really, if you're into sound design or you sell sample kits, I would recommend that. And then I use EQ8 to kind of bring out a bit of around 65 hertz, because it was kind of where I wanted the kick to hit. And then use saturation to just drive it. Just turn the soft clipper on so it doesn't clip. And I basically use Fab Filter to kind of monitor, just to let me know where everything is, but it's not really doing anything. And I said you can get way more technical with it. If you're really into sound design, you're really creating kits for people to buy and stuff, you want to probably do a lot more to the kick. But this would, to me, sounded really cool. And for a kick drum, and so I put that into my drum rack here. Once I bounced that kick drum sound down, recorded it, and dragged it over to the drum rack. All right, so now my drum rack isn't playing. Give me a second here. There we go. So I have my kick drum there in the drum rack, and the next thing I did was create sort of a snare, or I guess like a it's a bit of a rim shot side stick kind of sounding snare, very lo-fi if you're into Monty Booker type sounds. So let me turn this kick drum off here. And so I did the same thing with the snare. To kind of, back when I started making music, I was into like really 90s hip hop. We would have called this a super weak snare. But like in lo-fi music, there's a nice little, you know, snappy snare. And I did the same process here, using the frequency wheel here to just take a chop of the sample of the keys and get it low enough to where there's a little bit of a bottom end on it, but kind of want it a little snappy. And I use the drive plugin, I use the drive gain inside Simpler in this time to kind of give it some drive. And used a bit of EQ. This is like almost hi-hat-ish right here. And then take off some high end. And you kind of have like a, and I did use saturation as well. And a bit of the glue compressor to give it some color. And also boost the gain a bit. And again, I have a Pro EQ here, not doing anything. It's just kind of monitoring what the sound is. And I loaded that into, I recorded that and loaded into my drum rack. So a second here, for some reason my
It might be, I see that your drum rack is set up to take
channel 2.
Well, yeah, MIDI in from that
yeah.
Roland A.
Yeah, that's because I was using the Force. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here we go. All right. You know what? I'll come back to the drum rack part because I'll need to come back anyways to show what all the other sounds I put in the drum rack. But I did the same thing for the hi-hat. You know, as you can, if you saw how I did the snare, the hi-hat would be pretty common sense. I guess the really fun part, the sort of part that people kind of wow about, is when you use a sample to make like a keyboard sound. It's really simple to do, but it's a real cool trick, I guess, for people who aren't as familiar with this kind of thing. So with the Simpler, if you, like this sound came from the car keys. And it's just achieved by basically looping a small section of the sample. I like doing this because you never know what you're going to get. And so you can kind of create your own cool sounds. It's more fun to me than using like Omnisphere and Keyscape sometimes, because it's just you're pretty much, like I said, you never know what you're going to get. It's like when you can take a different section of this and create something completely new. And to achieve that, you press the loop button here. Without the loop button, that's what it sounds like. So as you hear the key sample here, now it's going to mess up my whole beat. So let me let me save a new copy of it. Hold on. All right, so I really want you to hear this is the key sample I originally sounded. And I'm going to throw EQ on it. That just kind of cuts off the high end and the low end. And some more EQ here for the low end. And so I'm really just taking off a lot of the, just EQing to get kind of a mid-range. It's kind of where like a Rhodes would sit. That's the sound that I'm kind of going for. And all right. And so within the Simple plugin, like I say, you want to press the loop button here. That'll loop a small section of the sample. And you want to get really small because you're trying to get a sustained note that you can tune. When you do too large of a section, you see the notes, you know, it's a lot of information there. So you might get an issue where it's going in and out of key. So if you get like a really small sample, and I also have a plugin on at the end here. Yeah, this chorus, that's not going to help us stay in tune here. So it sounds like a really cool sound. And for the sake of time, I'll just use this, even though I would probably go for like a better sound. I really want you to just to basically see how to do this yourself, I guess, if you're not familiar with this. And the first thing you want to do is tune it. So I'll pull up a tuner here in Ableton. And you want to press middle C on your keyboard. And you want to down tune it or up tune it until you get C matching here. And so you want to transpose. And let me get a different part of the sample because, like I said, it's going in and out of key. So I want to find a part that where the note sustains. All right. All right, so we have a B here. So we want to transpose it till we get to C. All right, come on. Let me find a different section here. This one's giving me a hard time. All right. Usually this works a lot quicker. All right, here we go. Maybe it's the other plugins I have on. Let me kind of turn everything else off because I usually do this first, you know. So, all right.
You might need to make the loop longer. I
Longer
think.
loop. Yeah, let me try that.
Yeah.
I mean, to be real though, I've always sort of enjoyed the process of digging through a sample because a lot of times it seems like what I think is gonna work doesn't, and then you kind of discover something that does. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of an expected part of the process for me. I don't know about you. Maybe you nail it on the first time usually.
No, I don't, man. It really does. It's really trial and error, you know, and that's why I was like, doing this was like, I nerve wracking a bit because it's like you never know how long it's going to take to get the right thing. But yeah, I mean, you want to make sure, I guess in essence, what I'm saying is you want to make sure that you can play it with other sounds. And the easiest way to do that is to tune everything to C. I don't tune everything to C all the time. Like I would take something like this and but it's this way, the tuning on it is like so, and I'm pretty sure a lot of it, let me try to do it this way. I might have to, because I changed a lot of the parameters in here, creating the sound. And so it could honestly be that I have something on like LFO or something that's causing the sound to go in and out of tune. But yeah, like you could just ignore tuning it and just create and use your ear. But most people I see do this, they tune it that way you can, if you pull this sound, you can save this as a rack and then pull it up in another beat later and play along with other instruments. So for me, it's kind of important to tune it if it's a sound that I'm going to want to use again. But as you say, I agree. Like you don't know, just sampling, the best part about it is like, oh man, this sounds really, really cool. And so I'll go back to the other file here just to kind of show like what I did with the bass and how I made it all kind of work together. But yeah, this part can take it can take an hour finding something cool that you like, you know. So all right, so this was closer to the sound of what I had. I think we changed a bit of it, but that's closer.
Baby, let's go make sci-fi. Don't you?
Here's the original sound here. And so I kind of added my own sort of detuning with some plugins here. So I used the chorus ensemble here to kind of about it, and you hear kind of just to give a little texture. And as far as like a bass sound here, I did the same for the bass. Turn this off. What else is playing? Okay. So I essentially did the same thing here, just found a section and looped it, turned down the frequency, and used EQ to kind of shape a bass sound out of it. And as I said, this was an extreme example of me using car keys, but like if you have something that sounds closer to a bass, say you sample a real bass instrument and you're at a friend's house and they have an upright bass, you can take like a one-shot note and use this in the same way to make a full instrument out of just a little snippet of a sound. I've done this a lot with like Chick Corea. He's like, I usually listen to a Chick Corea record and just wait for like one part where he just hits a note, and then I'll kind of take that note and then I'll make an instrument out of it. And I'm like, it's cool. I made an instrument out of a record, out of a Chick Corea record in a way that not normally people would, or any sound. So that's what I like the most about it. And I also use that method for a synth lead here. So this in the song, it's this part here. So it's just playing like a melody line there.
Baby, let's go make sci-fi. Don't you know we live in it?
And also did that for an organ here. Like an organ-ish sound. It's not an organ, but kind of add a little texture. I threw some of the new reverb in Ableton on it. This is what it sounds like to me. Also some chorus. Not the effect. And just some more percussion elements, really. These are all made from the same sample, and let me see here.
Baby, let's go make sci-fi. Don't you know we living in sci-fi? Sci-fi. Sci-fi.
As I said, this was me using an extreme example to try to show the capabilities. But you can make something even better using samples that are kind of more along, like if you use something that sounds similar to a kick drum or something that sounds similar to a snare drum or to a Rhodes keyboard or whatever, to kind of create your own sounds. I know when I was younger, I didn't have money to pay for Keyscape and all those other things. So if I'd known something like this when I was younger, it probably would save me a couple $100 from buying a lot of sounds. But yeah, I mean, if that's pretty much the gist. I said, I don't know if we'll have time to like create something new, but yeah, if anybody had any questions or comments or anything, sorry if this may have been a little janky. I'm just trying to figure out the screen and everything and whatnot, but yeah.
So I want to just jump in and say I love the sounds that you were able to get with just this like just super basic sound, initial sound. Like it's inspiring how many different timbres you can pull out of the same thing. So it has a specific vibe. No one is ever in a million years going to have this tone ever. Besides this, like you'll never have this tone again, right? Like this is like something that is totally ephemeral, and I love the, like we did a project in the Ableton group of taking a goose sample and making music with it last year, and it's like getting one sample to sound like all of these hugely different frequency, like a kick versus a hat are like such different sounds. So I really love like how you were able to craft all of these different sounds with the initial one.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and I feel like you can do this in Logic. I don't even, when I go look for tutorials on Logic doing this, I don't see a lot, so I'm like, I don't know if it's just Ableton, just the way it works or something, or just the time stretching capabilities. It usually doesn't sound as good when I do time stretching like this and manipulating with other DAWs. I don't know if it's just the algorithm in Ableton or what. But
I do feel like I feel like they have some proprietary algorithms that do the thing better than others. Because I mean, even yeah, they're in the simpler, like even just those different warp algorithms. Because I mean, those are essentially in my mind like, you know, what is under the hood. They're doing all that time stretching. But the fact that they have those different options for like beats or tones or textures or the complex kind of warping and stuff, yeah, it seems like they do something a little differently than a lot of other DAWs.
awesome. And yeah, I know a lot of you've been using Ableton for a lot longer. So I mean, maybe there's something that you all would know that I could, you know, learn. So I mean, yeah, if you have any other comments, anything, definitely chime in or questions.
Yeah, I got one. So are you using the chorus to detune those, or is the sample itself changing pitch? I think you're using the chorus, right? I'm actually not familiar with using it in that way or anyway.
Yeah, the chorus did give me a bit of you talking about on the key sound that I used?
Yeah.
Yeah, the chorus did give a bit of it has a vibrato effect here. I'll pull it up. And so turn this off. It's detuned a bit in the sample, but this kind of brings it out.
Yeah, man,
Yeah, so it's still, see, without it, it's kind of, it's not as detuned. But it still kind of has that sort of lo-fi old sound, just the way it was sampled. And like I said, I've tried stuff like that in other DAWs. It usually comes out sounding like crap. But the way the loop function works is simpler. It's kind of like the magic button here. So
very cool.
Yeah, it's given like so much like tape warble to it. Which yeah, upon hearing this, you would think, oh man, like Yons was sampling off these old tapes and stuff, just because it each individual patch that you built sounds like it comes from a distinct place off mechanical gear in some kind of way because it's got that movement. But yeah, that's so dope.
yeah, it's all Ableton, man. It really is. I tried to make sure I used all Ableton stock sounds because when I do this, I usually use some other stuff, but other people might not have that. So I try to show, hey, with just using the stock stuff in Ableton, you can definitely get some great sounds just with, you know, your own samples for sure. But yeah, if anybody else have any other questions or comments, I see my friend Gulches is in here. He's a modular king.
Hey, Yons, that's really Chris.
Chris?
Yeah, that's Chris. He taught me everything I know about modular.
Oh, yeah, man, he's amazing.
He's the modular king around here. I won't take that from him.
Oh, you said there's another guy named Chris that taught you everything about modular?
No, Chris Kincaid here in the call.
Oh, I'm looking. I have like 4 people that I can see. Oh, okay, I see Chris now. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the one. When I first started up, he was the mentor for it. He was on like Bellarmine stuff, and I was like, oh man, like
That's the tutorial that I want to see.
yeah, that's wild too. But no, I love the work that you're doing in Ableton, and I feel like some of it you can do in Logic. But I agree that there's definitely an algorithmic difference in the time warp in Logic that sometimes it just kind of gets artifacty, but sometimes I kind of like that. I like the artifacts that are sometimes brought out in the Logic time warp. But you know, it's just all kind of preference and what you like. You know, I'm just here observing for the most part.
Oh, so you mainly use Logic?
Yeah, Logic is definitely my main thing. I use Ableton sometimes for kind of like chaining stuff like that, and for some of like the drum racks. But other than that, it's all Logic and then the modular for me.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've seen some people who use Logic to do some of this stuff. It definitely, I feel like makes it a lot more with a simpler plugin. I haven't even used the sampler plugin yet. I don't know if that works similarly or not. Um, but yeah, I'm just looking forward to getting more involved um, in Ableton and using some of the Maxwell Live devices that I've seen online to get even crazier with it. But yeah, man, have you done sampling like this before, Gulches, where you kind of use the loop effect to create?
Yeah, I've used some of that, like, and sometimes it wasn't always like it was loops. I guess what I did, I I guess I got inspired by Andrew Wong on YouTube, and he was like using all these weird off the wall, pieces, just like whatever was in the studio or in his home, just like dropping it next to the mic and doing that kind of thing. And I got inspired by that, and I made it a couple beats, and it was mostly just like hitting things like percussively, and some of it was looped, but I think probably for the most part I used other instruments for like tonal things, because the warping in Logic didn't really allow for really tiny slices that you could end up oscillating and making into a true pitch.
Yeah, and that's what I feel like for me was the game changer, just being able to take small samples and create just an entire sound from that. And yeah, just it gets. I feel like if you use more, like I've sampled off my Moog with this process and created like some new because Moog is mono, so now it gives me option to make some poly sounds from the Moog grandmother, which is really cool.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
it's yeah, and I have the MPC. You can do it with the MPC, but like I say, the algorithm in the MPC it's just different, It's not, I wouldn't say it's necessarily bad. It's just Ableton just has a certain sound in the algorithm, I think, that really kind of smoothens out certain things
Yeah.
to make it more musical sounding, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, I like that idea too. Like when I first got like my first little synthesizer, definitely like trying to like sample it and then putting it into a poly sampler in Logic. Like back when we had the EX24, like you could just like take a single sound and then you could just map it across the keyboard, and then you could kind of have a poly synth. And
Yeah,
I like doing that, but then they like switched it up. Like they got rid of EX24, and I'm like, what happened to my what happened to EX24? It disappeared. We got this new sampler, but I just haven't
yeah.
dove into it 100%.
The new sampler is cool, is really good, man. It's like you can tell that are in competition with Ableton.
Sure.
Uh, it's definitely, I like the new sampler in Logic. I'll still use it sometimes when I was at a studio the other day and they didn't have Ableton. I had to use Logic, so I had to use that sampler.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I think they're both great. It doesn't matter what DAW you use.
Sure.
Overall, I just think there's different negatives and positives to each DAW, in my opinion. I feel like right now I usually, when I do go back to Logic, like I said, was for vocal comping. Now it's more for like, I'm just more familiar with it when it comes to mixing and mastering, and able to have that screen where you go to for a session view, and it's also the mixing screen. It's a little weird for me.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure I'll get used to it. I know I have some mixing.
That is what it kind of originally turned me off about it, because mostly I'm just doing a lot of like mixing for clients and stuff like that. And comping, oh my gosh, I couldn't live without Logic comping. And I'm sure you could probably do something like that in Ableton too. Ableton is just so versatile in everything that it does, as far as I can tell, and that's why I'm part of the group, because I'm like, let me see what I can see in Ableton and see if I can do that in Logic, and what can I improve my workflow with, because Ableton seems to be the boundary pusher. You know what I mean? Like they're always kind of thinking of something new and exciting, and people are using it in new and exciting ways, and that's what turns me on about it. It's just it's the community around it that Logic really doesn't have.
Exactly. That's why I'm here today. I love Ableton.
Absolutely.
So yeah, if anybody else have any questions or comments you want to add in, feel free.
I've heard the beat, but could I hear it again so I can watch it?
Baby,
synth changed here because I messed around with it, so it's a little out of tune right now.
Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah, I guess I can show you my point here with the tuning here on the synth. I know that's something we were trying to figure out earlier. So yeah, so I'm pressing the C right now on B. So I want to, and sometimes you have to press the detune. Oh, that's what the detune is. What fine tune. So yeah, now it's on C and it should sound right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the major things when doing this is to keep everything kind of playable. is and other than that, it's pretty simple. Honestly, it's really because a lot of times I post a video just to kind of like gain some interest on social media, and I'll post a video. I made this whole beat with using a Doritos bag, and people are like, "Oh my god, how you do this?" It's kind of the simplest way to gain some followers on TikTok, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, every Ableton user should definitely, use that to their advantage if you're a producer trying to get some, and I think Andrew Wong's video is what kind of got me into that when I seen him doing something similar, and I'm like, oh my god, how are people doing that? And there's another guy, I think his name is Chuck Sutton. Y'all familiar with him?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does this a lot where he'll take like a video of something, a plane, whatever crash and make a snare. And I'm like, oh my God, how is he doing that? But now to it, I realize it's a lot simpler than, and that's why I thought simpler. And that's why I thought it'd be a good tutorial. Just, I feel like everybody who uses Ableton that samples, yeah, that'd be a cool way to, produce and, especially for videos and things like that. I think it's really cool.
And you can use it for practically anything, right? You're just like, I'm looking for something quick and easy for an interesting texture. You just pick up a random item and sample it.
Exactly.
It's great.
Well, I love that you mentioned earlier, right? That you'll go to a musician like Chick Corea or something and just look for like a tone to then micro sample. And I love when people do that because I think that totally shatters the common understanding around sampling, creativity, legality, and all that stuff. Because like nobody could make any kind of convincing argument that like you're taking any kind of large chunk of Chick Corea's creative juice by just taking a millisecond or 5, of a note, right? And there's so much creativity in there, in the forethought, the intention, seeking it out, and then the processing that, processes like that just completely shatter that huge idea that our music industry is kind of built on, and where it fights a lot of us in our process of somehow that sampling is stealing, sampling is bad. And it's like, actually, it's just another gateway to this endless kind of fount of creativity. And yeah, so I love examples that really just put that front and center.
Yeah, man, that's a great point, because for me, it's just simply how do everything is so digital now, and everybody has access to the same sounds, and the drip plugin, and so how do you create something different or new? And I think sampling yourself, like you said, nobody else is going to have access to the stuff you have in your room. Like if you just sampling that stuff and creating something new, I think that's really interesting, man. I think that's the way forward as we get more digital and everything becomes just like ubiquitous. People kind of using technology to create these moments where there's a bit of like personality and individuality. So yeah, but I hope it's not too simple or too short. It's like I didn't know. I guess you said we have until what time?
We got till about 8:30, so like 10 minutes left. Feel free to do whatever. If you got another project you want to pull up and just even show, I know I'd love to see that. Of course, like, yeah, more questions can come in. I also know that you do, I mean, you do a lot of vocal work too. And I know that's something that we get questions about a lot in this group. Just, vocal processing and chains and stuff in live. And so feel free if you got any examples of that kind of ready and handy that you want to dive into in the next couple minutes. We
I
got
would
some
I
time.
would love that personally. And also like I'm really glad that you went over the simpler because I've been wanting to mess with that, but haven't yet. And I didn't realize how much you could do. So that's awesome.
Awesome. I'm glad somebody learned something or saw something interesting. Yeah, as far as vocals on this track, I didn't do a lot of processing here. These just kind of raw takes. I usually would let me see here. I had this vocal synth. I don't know what I did with this.
I'ma have to call you love.
Oh, that was a whole alternate chorus that I had chose. And I guess like sometimes I'm trying to figure out what, what to sing. And let me see what this sounds like. This might be terrible. So bear with me.
Don't you love sci-fi? I just think we living in sci-fi. I just think we living in sci-fi.
So that was just an alternate chorus. I thought I did something with vocal synth. This is a plugin I use sometimes from Isotope. There's like talkbox and vocoder options here. But I don't even know myself exactly all the details of this plugin. I'm still learning it. So we'll probably do that one for another video. But yeah, all the vocals in here, I pretty much, this will probably be a bad example of vocal work because everything's dry. All the vocals here are dry. So it's weird because I usually do add a lot of effects. Let me see here, something I would do to some of these vocals here because they're not tuned yet. These are all pretty much me. If you sing a lot of vocals together, sometimes you can sound like you're in key or sound like you're on the right pitch. Yeah.
Sci-fi, sci-fi, sci-fi.
So something I would do in Logic, but we're in Ableton, is I would group all these together and then I would pull up Isotope Nectar. And let me see here. I like Nectar because it's like an all-in-one plugin for vocals. And you can kind of just do like one quick thing here. Yeah. This is probably the worst take to watch. So you can do.
Is that you? Is that you hitting that?
Yeah, that's me. Like I said, it sounds better within the context of the other vocals because you can, with gang vocals, you can sound like you know how to sing a bit more.
That sounds amazing. That's range. That's great.
Oh man, thanks. It's just sitting here and trying to hit a note for half an hour. But yeah. Like once you find the key of the song, you can go in and like add other with using the harmony tools here. And it's also like delay and reverb and still. I would like group all these vocals together usually and pull like Nectar up and like maybe I'll add some EQ on individual vocals. But yeah, like before I send to somebody like Gulches who would mix it. But yeah, as a producer, I try to do a little bit of mixing. I used to try to you know, I used to mix stuff. Oh, I used to over mix a lot of stuff. So I guess if I have any advice is don't over mix, like as when you're producing, you know, try to get, if something isn't sounding right, I would say go back and re-record it first before you try to like fix it with mixing, because then you'll get it to an engineer or something and they're just going to highlight however bad it is. They're just going to bring out like the whatever it sounds like, you know, at a core level, it's just going to be, you know, magnified pretty much. So I try not to use a lot of mixing plugins nowadays and just try to get the beat or whatever I'm doing sounding as good as possible on its own. That way, when you do go to mixing, it's really just decoration at that point and not so much fixing and trying to make something sound better. But yeah, I mean, I wish I had more that I could say about that. But yeah.
Well, just another quick question too, because I see on those two kind of chorus vocals, you got the panning on them, you know, both spread. Do you have any particular like strategies for doing that with vocals? Like, yeah, what's your usual approach for like stereo panning with vocals?
It depends on how many vocals I'm doing. There was an even amount, so I just kind of like hard pan left and right for each one. Just to kind of like, I grew up kind of in church, like kind of, you know, being around choirs and stuff. And so that's kind of how I like to just do all my sounds generally, just kind of almost like, since I'm doing a harmony here, it was almost like a chord on the keyboard, I guess. So like, yeah, these solo these here. Yeah.
Sci-fi, 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 sci-fi.
Yeah, so I basically have them pan hard left and right, just so they're even. I guess, and just level them to where everything is kind of, no one take is like overpowering another unless it's the lead vocal. So,
Sci-fi, sci-fi.
I think actually I have more on the left because of the sound of the instrument that I had on the right, just to kind of, so I do have actually more vocals on one side because I used to just pan everything mono and I learned like, hey, I'm missing a lot of my stereo field. And so now I'm kind of trying to make room for everything by like I think I have some of the percussion panned right, and also, yeah, the synth lead is panned right. So I put the vocals kind of more to the left to make room. None of that was really like, I guess I didn't actively think to do that. It was just naturally kind of me working through the track and like, you know, what sounds all right. But I mean, I probably would do things differently if I sat down like, okay, how would I mix this? But yeah, I just wanted to make sure it felt good, you know. So I found myself kind of just panning things based on how it feels and not really thinking too technically about it. But generally, if those vocals were solo without the music, I would probably try to make them evenly panned, you know, across the frequency, you know, left and right.